Freedom of information, freedom of expression, access to information is a fundamental right.
When information is withheld, corruption tends to thrive.
Journalists are still accessing information in government's possession through the traditional ways, either through leaks or through information that government has.
Access to information doesn't mean that we are going to disclose all the information in government. Because of that, we still need a bit of secrecy.
Our public officials to date are not yet aware of even this law itself. There's a lot of ignorance about the law.
There is no excuse for anybody to fail to comply.
In 2011, Transparency International report on corruption perception ranked Uganda amongst the most corrupt countries in the world. Uganda was ranked 143 out of 182 countries, meaning that Uganda has declined from its 130th ranking in 2009. In East Africa, Uganda came third after Rwanda, ranked 49, and Tanzania at position 100. Kenya came in fourth in the region at 154, while Burundi is a distant last at 172. The ranking highlights the levels of bribery of public officials, ranging from kickbacks in public procurement and embezzlement of public funds. Uganda is ranked among the countries most affected by petty bribes, according to the 2009 Global Corruption Barometer of Transparency International, an international watchdog. Uganda scores the third highest among 69 countries in the world that are most corrupt. Sisi Kagaba, the director Anti-Corruption Coalition, ACCU, asserts that corruption reigns where information is concealed.
We all know that when information is withheld, corruption tends to thrive because you find that a lot of secrecy surrounds a number of shady deals. No wonder the issues relating to the oil allegations came out, and you find that the whole oil allegations and the exchange of funds and the exchange of monies between the top people in the country, all that was able to be done because of the secrecy that was surrounding the whole issue relating to oil. So without information, people are not in a position to hold their leaders accountable. Without information, corruption is definitely going to thrive because things are going to be done in the dark. And in a country like Uganda, where we say that we are a democratic state, because one of the tenets of democracy is openness and transparency. So if the government is not open, if there's no transparency in government dealings, then people will cease to trust their leaders.
Access to information is a fundamental human right enshrined in the Ugandan Constitution of 1995, Article 41, in complicity with the international treaties of which Uganda is a signatory.
That, to us, is inspiration, is motivation, because as human rights activists, we derive a lot of inspiration from the international instruments and treaties, and also declarations on human rights. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and now the specific resolution of the UN.
Although the 1995 Uganda Constitution mandates citizens to access information and the Access to Information Act in place, a lot is still desired, especially the legislation bit. Discontented with the barrier to access information in the government domains, a coalition of civil society organizations championed by Human Rights Network Uganda, HURINET, in 2004, spearheaded the formulation of the Access to Information Bill that translated in the 2005 Access to Information Act.
Truly, this act that we celebrate today has its roots in civil society. It's the handwork, in a good measure, the handwork of civil society.
This put Uganda into the third position of the African continent with such a legislation. The passing of the legislation meant that public information was to be at disposal for all citizens who so wished to access information, and ending the concealing of information in public offices.
People are still buried. People still think in the old tradition thinking, because in some of the offices you'll find, up to now, government officials have documents that are just where you go, they cannot give you information because they feel that they should not give you information, and the issue, what they will ask you is information for what, you know, and they still cannot understand that the current situation, today, that you cannot keep information from the public.
Access to information doesn't mean that we are going to disclose all the information in government. Because of that, we still need a bit of secrecy. But it's secrecy in that if it regards somebody's health, or if it's information of a defense nature, security-like nature.
A senior journalist at the Monitor newspaper, Charles Mangusha, says that while there is Access to Information Act in place, it does not guarantee to access information, as it provides for 21 working days to get a response from the people holding information. This, he says, does not work, especially for practicing on-spot news journalists.
I appreciate the fact that it takes time to dig up information, but 21 days is a very long period of time to be waiting to do a story. Yes, you need to be patient if you are an investigative journalist wanting information, but 21 days is a pretty long time. That needs to be adjusted. There are also other complications, especially for journalists working with smaller media houses, for members of the public that might want information in government hands. If you ask for payment, some of the payment is a little high for ordinary people to pick up that money. The cost of looking for that information should be reduced, because the information is public information in the first place. It's compiled and put together for the benefit of the Ghanaian taxpayer. So accessing it should be an easy process.
This notwithstanding, the Secrecy Act, which many a times is used to protect the information officers. Many times the media and advocacy, civil society, has used other methods of accessing information from public offices, which should not be the procedure.
I don't know of any media house or any single journalist who has gone through access to information to get information in government hands. Journalists are still accessing information in government's possession through the traditional ways, either through leaks or through information that government has of its own will made available to the public.
You can no longer keep information public. If you deny me information that is in your docket, maybe you can use other means to get information. And even when, by the way, even if you move to some of the government ministries and even departments, you can find that there's a document that is on the website of an institution. When you go to ask for this information, they'll ask you, the officer may still want to know why you want information, even when the information is in the public domain.
There are many conflicting laws that are still affecting the functionality of Access to Information Act.
There is no excuse for anybody to fail to comply with the Act. That requires information in the hands of public institutions and public officers to be made available to the public once it is requested for.
Since the Access to Information Law is newer, it precedes the Secrecy Act. So we are still free to give out information for as long as it doesn't concern security, and as long as it is not health information, personal health information.
However, such messages have not barred government from threatening implementation of Access to Information Act through other pieces of regulation, leaving many wondering whether government has any political will to have an informed citizenry.
Access to information is now being threatened by new pieces of legislation that government is trying to put into place. There is a new regulatory framework that's being worked on. There is an amended Press and Journalism Act that government wants to push through, and these seem to be trying to take away that right of access to information and weaken the Access to Information Act.
You find that government is not yet willing to give out information despite the fact that the law is in place. And of course, this can best be witnessed by the recent oil debates that were in Parliament, whereby members ensured that the production sharing agreements are made public documents. Now, these are things that should ideally have been made public, but the government was very hesitant to make them public, despite the fact that the law is in place.
Government officials are mandated by law to implement the Access to Information Act. Unfortunately, many have been proved ignorant about the very act they are meant to implement.
Our public officials to date are not yet aware of even this law itself. There's a lot of ignorance about the law. Our survey that was conducted 2 years back revealed very significant, serious issues on the awareness of the law on access to information. That most people were not aware of the law itself on access to information.
Government has to be serious, especially on implementation. It has to be serious in dissemination. People in government, for example, for us who deal with people, local governments, they are not aware of the law. So for them, they are stuck in the Oath of Secrets Act, that it is a secret they are not supposed to disclose. So that's a challenge.
But do the local people understand that they have a right to information, and if it had any value for them, to access it?
My observation is that public information is supposed to be free and accessible. But I think it is much limited. We don't have access to information. Perhaps it is because of legislature. We don't have particular laws pointing in that direction. Maybe we need to be enlightened. The public needs to be informed, so to speak, of their freedom to information.
Do you know anything to do with access to information?
No, maybe only through internet. Yeah.
Access to Information Act.
Ordinary people in Uganda and the rest of the world do not feel empowered to speak out about corruption. For the Undersecretary, Ministry of Information and National Guidance, Monica Kalemba says that some government officials who deny public information are not ignorant of the act, but rather shun away from their responsibility.
The ones who claim to use the Secrets Act, really, I think they just want to use it as an excuse. Not because they don't know. Because how come that we've been giving out that information when people come and they haven't written anything down, they ask for information and they get it. Yeah, I think we just use it as an excuse. When I don't want to give you information, I will say, I don't know about the other one, I only know about the Official Secrets Act.
Civil society organizations, journalists, and individual citizens continue to pursue information that is within government possession with hurdles.
Without information, people are not in a position to hold their leaders accountable. Without information, corruption is definitely going to thrive because things are going to be done in the dark. And in a country like Uganda, where we say that we are a democratic state, because one of the tenets of democracy is openness and transparency.
I welcome the regulations because I think freedom of information is one of the ways of fighting corruption. Freedom of information is one of the ways of ensuring transparency. And corruption cannot prevail in an environment of transparency.
Without information, sincerely, you can't fight corruption. You need to get very good information and very precise information. That will be the basis of your evidence.
Two Monitor Publications newspaper senior journalists, Angelo Izama and Charles Mangusha, have since gone to court to challenge the Access to Information Act's operationalization. This is after the failed application to access oil sharing agreement contracts, which they were denied.
In my case, we did try to test its applicability. We wrote with a colleague, Angelo Izama, to the Attorney General and to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources to give us access to one of the most contentious issues in this country over the last about 6 or 7 years, the oil exploration program in Western Uganda. We wanted to get access to the agreements that government of Uganda has signed with various exploration and exploitation companies in the western part of the country. The Permanent Secretary wrote back to us and said he was consulting. That was in 2007. Was consulting to give us the information. Then the Solicitor General in the Attorney General's chamber also wrote to us and said the information could not be accessed because there were anti-disclosure clauses that were signed in those agreements. That was 2007. Then we decided to go to court. once we had explored that route of using the Access to Information Act, and it had failed us. We went to court, and surprisingly, the magistrate said said the Constitution still provided government secrecy on some of those issues. So it hasn't been effectively utilized.
The case has now taken years in the courts of law. Litigation is the only remedy provided by the law once information is denied.
Our own experience has revealed that that is not the best option. That should be it's a last resort thing that you can do. Reason is that the process is slow. The process is very expensive. It cannot be. Very few people can afford this process.
The oil agreements have placed in the limelight strong disagreement between the two arms of government, the legislature and the executive. This came to light when the country witnessed a heated debate over the exposure of the oil sharing agreements during the 9th Parliament debate.
It will not germinate. When I heard that his name had appeared among those who were implicated, having exchanged hands, money exchanging hands through his banks.
In trying to ensure the Access to Information Act is functional, Hurinet supported an initiative by Western Ankole Civil Society Forum in its effort to access information that involved Haba Group, which was hired to construct the Bushenyi District Stadium. 1 billion shillings was sent to the stadium in pictures and was just abandoned by Haba Group after it was paid all the money.
We had a frustrating time. From 2008-9, when we started asking for information, we wrote a letter to COW. They didn't respond. We had a demonstration. They didn't respond. And at some time, we were even called the opposition because they thought we were chanting government. But of course, along the way, we worked with the district councillors in trying to ask for the same information. The information, even the councillors didn't have information. Many members of the district council didn't have information. Many technical people in the government, the ones that constitute the district technical planning committee, didn't have information. Now, as we went forward, we realized that the political leadership had an interest because the contract had been given to Masaja Baraba, and there had been exchange of pleasantries along the way. However, there are people in the government who knew bits of information, and so they kept on tipping us on this, tipping us on the other, but also using our investigation processes and working with the media again. Along the way, we didn't get information until when Hurinet supported us to be able to go to court, and of course they had to deliver the information.
Demonstrations were held in protest, and a new company was hired to put the stadium to a level where it can be at a reasonable